Hello, welcome to this week's episode of the Let Me Ask You This podcast. I am your host, E.B. Hepworth, and I'm so thankful that you're here. I start every single episode off by saying this, and I just want you to know I truly mean it from the bottom of my heart. This is not me in autopilot. This is me telling you how grateful I am that you are here. You could be anywhere in the whole world, and you're choosing to listen to this conversation, and that really blesses me. And I want you to know it is not lost on me. This week's episode is with my dear friend, Allina Roby. And actually, fun fact, 2 years ago, when I first felt the Lord starting to prompt in my heart to start this podcast, Allina was the first person that God put on my heart to have as a guest. So she's actually one of the very few guests to return as a second guest, which is honestly so cool. But Allina was the very first person I ever interviewed on this podcast. And long story short, she is so special to me. She's a missionary in Ukraine, but she came to come visit our family earlier this winter in 2025. And I was instantly like, well, you're in town. Could we please film an episode together? She was like, absolutely. And ironically, when we first filmed the first season, the very first episode, it was on a breakup that she was just coming out of. And I was like, are you in the point of the journey where you feel like you can unpack this? And so we did, which you can go back and listen to. And then this one, she had just gotten out of a different relationship. And so we do unpack just her beautiful heart of processing that. However, a majority of the episode is highlighting Allina's amazing life. And Allina devotes her life to living in the Ukraine and serving the orphan crisis. And she's one of those people that you look at and you're just like, she is doing the dang thing, and she's doing it well and with integrity. And oh my goodness, there's so many different things that we could have talked about when I'm sitting down to this friend, because she's very multifaceted, and I love that about her. But without further ado, here is my episode with my dear friend, Allina Roby. So fun fact, Allina and I have been friends for at least 5 years, 5 or 6 years. And we have had many paths cross, different groups of friends, both passions, missions, humanitarian, orphan care, just a million things. But she came to visit our family, 3 days ago. And this is actually the first time in our whole friendship that we've spent time in person, which someone listening to this can relate, because we all have those cyber friends where you're like, they know your deepest secrets. Yeah. They know your deepest secrets, and you're like, wait.
But we were just normal internet people. Somewhere along the way, we started FaceTiming and voice notes and all the things.
Yes.
And would just share heart.
Yes. Oh my gosh. You have been such a gift to me. And so I'm so excited to have you.
Thanks.
Thank you for being here in this podcast studio. I know, again. Oh, great point. I'm so glad you brought that up. Allina was my very first guest ever when we first launched this podcast, which is nearly 2 years ago. And it was right freshly after a breakup. And you can go back and check. It's literally called I Could Have Loved You, which I think is a song waiting to be written. And ironically, she just had another breakup about a month ago. So we were like, we're going to run it back. Yeah. That's not the only thing we're going to be talking about today, but we will definitely touch on it. But we just felt like we're at the point in her grief process where we can now be silly about
Well, yeah, now I can tell people, though, if you're going to break my heart, you're going to end up being talked about on a podcast.
Oh, 100%. You're it's a target at this point. Okay, Allina, will you share a little bit about who you are for somebody who has no idea who you are, where you come from, what you do? Tell the people about you.
Totally. We'll do a Cliff Notes version.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm 30 years old. We'll start there. I am single as of recently. But I live full-time in Ukraine. Grew up here in the States, kind of lived all over, was raised in the church in a very conservative Baptist background. Found my own journey with the Lord more in college years, young adult, through a series of incredible events, also just wild rides. I found myself in Ukraine in 2018. It rocked my world in a million ways, which we can talk about more in a minute. But it started a journey of my heart and my soul being there and wanting to be in full-time missions in Ukraine. And so in 2022, a full 24 days before the full-scale invasion with Russia began, I moved my life from Northern California to Ukraine. I live in the southwest region of Ukraine called Zakarpattia. And I've lived there for 3 years now, going on 3 years this month. So I work with children within the Ukrainian orphan care system, specifically children with special needs, medical needs. And it's been an incredibly wild 3 years. It's been so faith-filled, so grief-filled.
Yeah.
And I love it. Also, just one of the most challenging and rewarding times of my life.
Totally.
So you're finding me at the
very vulnerable season of your life.
At a time where I've learned a lot, I've broken a lot.
Yeah.
I've healed a lot.
Totally. 100%.
And just
well, we're going to run one of the main things I really want, because our last conversation was surrounded around heartbreak, which we will eventually get there. And that's so hand in hand when it comes to missions. But something I really want to start us off with is the process, and we've talked about this a lot since you've been here and over the years, of how you went, you fell in love, and you knew you wanted to go, and you the temptation to stay in that moment of having your heart break for a nation and then being like, I'm just going to stay, but you knew that wasn't the way. Like, tell me how I've been in missions for over a decade. I've walked with that's my heartbeat, long-term missionaries and sustainability in that. Tell me how your strategy of going into missions with your perspective and long-term, like, walk the listener through how you made those decisions to do missions the way you've done it.
Yeah. Similarly to you, I've been in ministry for 8 years now.
Yeah.
In a couple different capacities. But yeah, my first time in Ukraine was in 2018. And I was very much in the perspective at that time. I was 23 at the time. And I was in the perspective of really looking for something that did break my heart. That was, I could see myself going into full-time missions, but I didn't have much vision of what that would look like. And so in the time of my life that I first found myself in Ukraine, that's really what I was looking for with the Lord. And I was growing in a lot of maturity and healing in my time with my relationship with the Lord. So when I found myself in Ukraine, it was within 3 days that I started telling people, I think I'm going to live here. I think I'm going to move here, which is kind of funny because I feel like we all say that as Americans. We go over to Europe and we're exploring Paris and Rome and all things. It's like, I could live here. I could do this.
Yeah, there's
all
like
the bread
meme accounts
and the
devoted
cheese
to
and
that.
the wine.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is fabulous. But I'm walking around the streets of Ukraine and I'm like, man, just something about here already feels like home. And it was within 3 days that I started telling people that. And the crazy thing is no one said I was crazy. Everyone was like, oh, I could totally see that.
Oh, interesting.
Everyone who knew me was like, oh, yeah, I could see that. And that was even before I encountered the orphan care system. So that was just the country itself. And then who I was partnered with is actually who I am teammates with now. But his name's Clinton White, who's an American, had moved to Ukraine. And at that point had already lived in Ukraine for, I want to say, like 7 or 8 years.
Okay.
And he was the first introduction into the orphan care system. He let me join his ministry, and he was visiting institutions. And my very first step within the door, I was like, I could do this. This is such a need. There's such a need here, and I could do this. And I was immediately so set on fire. I had so much zeal and zest for it. I was like, I had all these ideas and a yes in my spirit and all these things.
Yeah.
And so, there was this struggle. I was like, man, I want to do it now. I don't want to waste time. Like, the need is urgent and the need is now. So there was a hot second where I was like, I just want to let go of all my responsibilities now and just stay.
Yes. Yeah.
But very clearly, I heard the Lord just, whoa. Slow down, my dear.
Yeah.
We have so much more that you need equipping, that you need to learn. And I very much was in a season of learning and healing during that time. So it wasn't much for me to realize, okay, wait, I have a lot going on.
This is the kindness of God slowing me down.
Yeah. My heart and my spirit were in a very vulnerable state.
Right.
So for me just to jump into something, such a large commitment, would have been highly irresponsible.
Yeah. Can I interrupt really quick and ask, do you think that is one of the reasons why you had such a sound mind? Because you went and you fell in love with the nation first. Then the next step was the people. And then the next step was a way to save or not to serve the people.
Yeah.
And so it's like nation, people, service.
Well, I think that there is something that if you don't have such a heart for the people and for the country, then how can you have a heart to come in and try to help them solve problems? Right. Not to say that I was ever going to be a savior, but to see a need. The huge reason why I thought that there was something to be done within the orphan care system is because of the Ukrainians that I met. Because of the people that had such a heart for their country, such a heart for their people.
Yeah.
And they had fought so hard for their right to live, for their right to exist, for their right to create, to be a nation, to come together, to reform, to do better.
Yeah.
And Ukraine has just been, they've been warriors for generations, not just in the light of this full-scale invasion, but for generations. They have been trying to rise up and do better and have faced such oppression that it was, my first impression was like their integrity and their tenacity to continue to stand up to that. So that was what showed me that, okay, there is a very broken system here that exists for these children in the orphan care system. But I've seen the way that Ukrainians stand up against oppression, stand up against brokenness, that there's something to be done here.
Yeah.
And so, I fell in love with that tenacity.
Okay. So then you fly back home and you instantly were like, I'm going to do what needs to be done to get back. What was the journey of coming to the point where you actually launched full time into?
Yeah, I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know all the things I needed to figure out to prepare for this.
You're 23 years old. No
I'm
one
23
expects
years
you
old.
to. Yeah.
So the goal was, okay, I need to figure out all the things I don't know.
Yeah.
And so my strategy was, I'm going to go work for a mission sending organization because surely they're going to know what missionaries need in order to like do something well, right? That was my thought. So I went and I worked full time. My degree is in marketing. My background's in marketing. So I went and worked full time in the marketing department of a mission sending organization. And I remember the founder of that organization, a dear friend of mine now, Seth Barnes, when I first came on campus, it was like one of the first times I met him in person. He, like, his initial question, which if you know the man, like, this makes so much sense, but he was like, so what's your 5-year plan? Yeah. Like, first question, like, out the box, like just like this innocent I'm 24 at this point, and like just this girl, and the founder of the organization I just got a job with is like, what's your 5-year plan? And it just like tumbled out of my mouth. I was like, I want to go to Ukraine and I want to serve the orphans. And he was like, oh, okay, we can help with that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So he knew from the get-go that like that was my end goal.
Okay.
Yeah. So worked for a mission sending organization. There was so many like kind of like forks in my road and curves in the road. So it definitely was not a linear.
Yeah. Because it took you what, 5 years?
4 years.
4 years. And, you are aware of the conversation. I mean, you're a very hyper aware person in general, but the process of knowing you were going to go over there and not do the quote white savior, which is what so many missions unintentionally does, not like just forgetting the locals and forgetting, just going with this like heart to serve, but doing a lot of harm. How did you position your heart to avoid that?
Well, I think what I first had to do is I had to heal a lot of my heart. Yeah. Because I didn't want to come, you and I have talked about this, I didn't want to come operating out of a wound. Because when you're called to a people group or a vulnerable group like orphans or, other vulnerable group, it's usually because of your own experiences that you've had in the world, that you've seen in the world. Yeah. And I didn't want to come into a space
and bleed
trying to heal myself through helping them, because that's not, at the end of the day, that's not going to help anyone. So when I came back to the States, one of the first things I did was jump into counseling. Yeah. I really started opening up doors and rooms of my past and my experience that I hadn't previously, that I'd been avoiding for a really long time. And so...
and not even with the heart posture of, oh, I'm going to do this so then I can get better, so then I can go and fulfill this, quote, calling or season. But you did it because you're like, wow, my heart has room for Jesus to come in and heal. And so that's the heart posture.
Well, I think whenever you recognize callings and drives and passions in your life, you want to know where they came from. You want to know, like, what part of myself is leaning so heavily towards this.
Totally.
And when you do that, when you're vulnerable with yourself, when you are, self-aware enough to start identifying those root causes, then you start recognizing, like,
shed so much light into why you're wired the same way. And then even in that journey, you're like, oh Lord, this calling. And then he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. That's actually not a calling. That's an expression of gifts I put in you. Your calling is to be with me, to abide with me, to sit with me. And you're like, oh, okay. And it kind of removes the equity of like, I exist to go and do this thing. You're like, actually, I exist to be with him.
Yeah. And he's like, first things first, let's get you and I right.
100%.
Because like 100%. if you're gonna go into a nation or a community or anywhere,
do it with me.
well, if you're going to do it in the name of Jesus,
Yeah.
like, hey, I'm here in the name of
I
Jesus.
gotta be with you, girl.
Yeah, it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to do it in the name of Allina.
Oh, how many missionaries do we know that go and forget the gospel at home and or forget just the healing spirit that only his bomb can bring. It's like, I mean, and there have been so many moments where I'm like, I left him back there. I forgot to bring him with me, but it is so hard to watch. And so since you were in the missions world, you had seen that done poorly multiple times. So you learned a lot. So you threw yourself into counseling and then...
Also mentorship.
Okay, good. I'm so glad you mentioned that.
During the course of the 4 years between my first kind of inciting factor, we'll call it, of my first encounter in Ukraine to the point where I actually, got on the plane and moved over there, I had surrounded myself somewhat intentionally and somewhat unintentionally, kind of just stumbled into some of these things, but found myself with incredible human beings around me, incredible peers that, were my age with like-minded goals. And then also, a generation above me that like really poured into my life. So I have, kind of this, I call them my church. We're all over the world, but it's just these people that I found during these times that know me and get me and know my heart. And they know, who the Lord has created me to be, who the Lord has tells me who I am. And they're the ones who have helped me foster and grow into the person that could do this.
Yes.
So my mentors.
And holding up your arms while you're there.
Totally.
Like you mentioned that so much the last couple of days. I'm like, I know all your mentors by name now. Because you're like, oh, well, that's so. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like they are who you call. They are who you like. And so you say intentionally, unintentionally, did you ever say, hey, will you mentor me? Will you fill this role? Like, was it that?
It really started with just relationship first.
Cool.
Just like genuine, sons and daughters of Christ coming together under hey, we both love the Lord. We're both doing kind of unusual things in the world. The first time I met my mentors, Dave and Chris, we were in Spain. Like we weren't even in the States. Like they were in Spain, kind of looking for, what is the Lord's going to call them into next. They're a married couple and we're, looking for a way to get involved in ministry. I was already working in full-time ministry with a program. And so we met, our hearts clicked. We call it love at first sight because we went and got dinner together just to see, hey,
you just click.
We're just both here. And
what a gift that you have a married couple. It's so rare to find older married couples that will give you their time.
I just adore them. They have been so generous with their time, their energy, their love, their wisdom, all the things. And when I say unintentionally, I didn't go to dinner with them that night being like, I'm in search of mentors. I need this in my life.
Because I have had that mindset.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. At that point in my life, I was just kind of like, I had a lot going on and I had a lot of questions. Yeah. And so I think we kind of found ourselves at dinner. I was like, telling them about my experience and they were speaking into it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this works. Yeah. Like this is really good and this is really fruitful. Yeah. So it really was just kind of from that first meeting that we became friends and they became people that I call. And I don't think it ever was this official conversation where I'm like, okay, you're my mentor now. But it was this understood, this relationship where they really wanted to pour in to the younger generation. And I really needed it. And they believed in me and they believed in where the Lord was directing me. So yeah, it was something I knew I needed it in my life, not necessarily something I forced, but a relationship that the Lord put in my path, and it worked and it clicked, and we've been running at it for now 4 years. Yeah.
So wholeness, mentorship, and you obviously, a huge part of what I love is the way you've stewarded your finances and gearing up to go. You sold everything. You sold your car. When people ask you, how long are you going? A lot of people expect you to say, a year or 2 years. People want to have a cap on, being sent to a space or a nation, a people group. And you have just been committed to saying, as long as God has me there. Yeah. And, the short-sighted, short vision people will be like, okay, she'll be home in 6 months. But you've bought land, you've poured yourself into that's what's been so incredible to me to watch is anytime someone asks, how long are you there? You always just say, until God releases me. Yeah. How have you come to the position and posture where that really is that you actually do believe that and that you're like, oh yeah, I'm going, I could spend my whole life here or I could spend 5 years here. How do you get to a heart place with the Lord of being okay with that?
Yeah. I think being around missions so much,
Yeah.
I did see so many people launch into the nations,
Yeah.
launch into different
That's so
capacities, different things. And a lot of times I saw people going in with a certain time commitment. And I understood that. Maybe that makes it easier to go for a lot of people.
Easier
being
to
like,
fundraise because
you
people
can
know I'm committed to her for 2 years and that's it.
Right. And so there's parameters around it. But what I also saw with that was that there was a timeline. There was a deadline. You knew it was going to come to an end.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lack of investment that happens when you know something's going to come to an end. Because you can do anything, even if it's painful and hard for a year, for 2 years, right? Because you know the pain's coming to an end.
Yeah. I mean, in a way, you're clocking in and you know, it's like the sand is just, it's dwindling down.
And I'm sure there's certain contexts where that's needed and that's necessary and all the things. What I wanted to do was I wanted to be invested in the community. I wanted to learn the culture. I wanted to really be a part of Ukraine's progress forward.
Yeah.
I didn't want it to just be a blip.
Yeah.
I didn't want to just be a visitor or a tourist. And so, my heart posture around that, around saying like, I don't know. Like there's so many unknowns going into something like this, let alone, adding the war as a contributing factor. But I had a yes in my spirit for being with God.
Yeah.
For doing something with him in the world.
I love that.
And if that's in Ukraine, amazing. If that ends up being somewhere else, amazing. But I felt so much confidence. I was scared out of my mind.
Yeah.
Everyone was always like, this is a pretty scary thing. I'm like, yeah.
Terrifying.
But having peace with the Lord does not mean a lack of fear.
Yeah.
But I had so much confidence that what I was doing was the right thing.
Right.
Like that I was in tune with him. I was in tune with the Spirit. I had a yes. He had a yes. I had so many people in my life that had a yes.
Right.
Because it's not just your yes that gets you there.
Right.
And that's such an important thing.
It's a word.
Yeah. It's your supporters, yes.
Yep.
It's your mentors, yes.
Yeah.
It's your prayer warriors,
your family.
Yes. Your families, yes. Yeah. So when you get those, and I think it's a unique thing.
Yeah.
I don't think everyone gets that. I don't think everyone finds themselves in a place where it's like, okay, these are all in alignment and I can go and I can launch and I can, be in a space that is unusual, that is scary, that is hard, but be supported.
Right.
Have my arms lifted up.
Right.
So I really did. I was I still am incredibly fortunate to have those things come together in the name of the Lord that launched me into this place.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of prayer work. There's a lot of healing. There's a lot of counseling. There's a lot of wisdom that has to be sought in order to make this decision. You don't.
Yeah.
I mean, there's spontaneity in it as well, right?
Sure.
You want to be able to go with the Spirit and flow, but you also want to be wise, especially going into a place where it's
a war-torn country.
It's an unknown culture.
Right.
It's an unknown time. The circumstances are ever changing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we saw a ton of wisdom. I like to say that at the time that I was launching into Ukraine, so just to give some context, it was January of 2022. The full-scale invasion started February 24th of 2022. So everyone who was paying even the least bit of attention knew that the full-scale invasion was on the horizon. And so a lot of people, I kind of describe it as people that were on the outside all thought I was crazy. All said, don't go, don't do this. Like, the kind of like second-hand acquaintances,
sure.
and, but anyone who knew me was like, of course you have to go.
Yeah.
Anyone who like knew my heart, knew where my relationship with the Lord was at, was like, of course you're going.
Yeah.
And then once I got there and the full-scale invasion started, again, it was like the secondary people were all like, you have to leave, you have to get out. But the people who knew me were like, of course you have to stay.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like anyone was like, you have to stay. But I knew in my heart I needed to stay. Dude. And so everyone else stood in agreement with that.
Yeah.
Those who knew me stood in agreement with
Which
that.
Is what's so special that you'd carved out who those people were before you had left.
And that was so important.
Had you not, exactly. It's like the peanut gallery. And then all of a sudden you're like being influenced by people that haven't been the journey with you, haven't stayed the course with you. So we'll switch gears a little bit for the sake of like, you are in obviously serving the orphan care crisis.
Mm-hmm.
You see the most heart-shattering things. And so there is so much I mean, we've talked about this a lot it's easy to be discouraged based off of the simple numbers, and you don't measure progress through numbers with a world issue like such. Yeah, it has to be measured by faces and just by, your own, like, okay, it's one person, it's just one at a time. Yeah. But how do you keep your heart like shifted towards the light in such a dark industry?
It is genuinely a day by day, hour by hour, minute by minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is dark when you encounter such innocence being manipulated by such darkness. I mean, the most vulnerable, innocent being on our earth, in our world, are our children. And where you have great vulnerability, you also have great evil. And I hate that that's a reality of our world, but because of the broken state that we live in, we have to fight just as hard, actually harder, with the lightness.
Right.
So, with that being said, with so much dark, and it's like orphan care in itself, and I know you've worked in very with very vulnerable people groups as well, so you understand this. Very often, we're the only ones that are actually speaking up and advocating for these individual children. Like you said, you can look at the whole number and say, oh, well, there's, X amount of organizations that work with orphans and whatever in Ukraine. But when you look at like myself and my team, the people I work with, like the children that we know, the names and the faces that we know, we're the only ones advocating for them.
Right.
So when you are working with such a vulnerable group, such a dark, I don't even want to say, but industry, because there is so much exploitation, there's so much abuse.
Of course.
When it comes to these vulnerable children, you have to know and carry into each situation. I'm not saying I do this well or perfect or even every single day, but you have to know that it's by the Lord's strength and not your own.
Yeah.
Because there is no way that we can face as just humans such a dark and evilness. Like we weren't created for that.
100%.
So when you walk into a room, when it's a hard situation, when these kids are not being treated with the respect and the care that they need, when you can see that there is abuse in a situation, like your humanness can't handle that. And the amount of times I get comments of like, I could never do what you do. And I'm like, I can't either. Yeah. I can't do what I do because it's not by my strength. It's by the strength of the Lord.
Totally.
And it's not even by necessarily my choice, but I will genuinely find myself in situations where I'm like, if this was just by me, if this was just Allina in this room,
I'm game over.
I'm done.
No, but I'm in the grace of God and he's brought me here. He's sustaining this. So I'm going to stay in the pocket.
And he'll genuinely answer prayers that I don't even know to pray.
Right.
Because he knows the situation so much more in depth than I do.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
It's like, honestly, prayer blows my mind in that sense. Because you're like, I don't get it. And he's up there interceding on your behalf, praying with you, for you, on behalf of you. But then also there's something with partnership of you, like...
Well, there's also, we carry the Spirit that's interceding for us as well, right? Because like when I don't even have the words for an experience... because my mind, my human brain can't even comprehend all that is happening on the spiritual realm and like in the physical. I can't comprehend that, but the Spirit that I carry with me into a space can.
You're right.
And knows how to intercede and knows all the other inner workings of a situation. So like, thank God.
I know. And then you'll hear the stories of mentors and they'll be like, were you having a hard night last night? Because I was up praying for you. And you're like, whoa, Granny's prayers go far.
And thank God.
And thank God, because that oil was literally paving my way that night. And it's just like, yeah.
The power of prayer, growing up in the church, so, I've heard this my whole life, right? Power of prayer, we have these prayer meetings, all the things. Until I got to Ukraine and had people from around the world lifting us up from the start of the full-scale invasion to different hard situations we've been in ministry, the tangible impact of prayer that I have experienced over the last 3 years has renewed my faith in tenfold than it ever could have, than I ever knew previously, having had a lifelong relationship with the Lord.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, let's talk about the difference between dreams and desires, because for the sake of the season you're in, the age you're in, the industry you're in, the people group you're serving, all of these different variables, you're single and you so deeply desire partnership
Yeah.
and a life to do this with. Like all week I've heard you say my person, my person, my person. Like you're on the hunt
Someday.
for your person. Yeah. And so where is this? Because it's congruent, right? Dreams and heart desires, they often walk together, but they're not always. I just feel like it's a lot more of this than we realize. So how do you, as a single missionary, carry the weight of desires versus dreams?
Sometimes not so well.
Yeah, I know. I mean, of course.
Yeah.
And how do you distinguish the difference between the two? Because you're like, my dream is to bring lasting change to an industry that needs it. My dream is also to share it with someone.
Yeah.
And so I know there's a lot of context in this, but like heart desires and dreams are often different. And you've counted the cost before you left that if I do this, this could mean heart desires don't happen.
Yeah.
And you've battled that. You probably have to continue battling that. That's a reoccurring like existing thing that you're always dealing with. But like, yeah, do you get what I'm asking?
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was 27 when I decided to move to Ukraine. At the time in my life,
I'm 27 years old. What is the quote?
no money, no prospects, and I'm already a burden to my parents.
I'm already a burden to my parents. Lizzie.
Don't you dare judge me.
Don't you dare judge me, Lizzie. Don't you dare.
Yes, 27 years old.
Okay.
And all my friends were getting married.
Oh, I mean, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and walk us down. There are people listening that are like, yeah, I'm watching people get the prayers I'm praying. And you're over, like, you've said yes to a very costly thing, and understand a lot of that's going to naturally close the doors to a lot of the desires you have.
Yeah.
What do you do with that?
You grieve it.
Yeah.
There is a grief. There was so much grief in saying goodbye, and it wasn't just romantic relationship. All of my relationships are long distance at some point in the year.
Yeah.
So when I'm in Ukraine, I am long distance with my family. I'm long distance with my nieces and my nephew. I'm long distance with some of my dearest friends.
Right.
When I'm in the States, I'm long distance from my people in Ukraine, the children I serve in Ukraine. So dealing with having some of the most important people in my life being so far away, that's a sacrifice I had to come to terms with.
Yeah.
One that felt harder than I think I ever knew to prepare for. When I first launched to Ukraine, everything felt so exciting and new and sexy that I don't know if I gave full weight to what you step away from when you move to the other side of the world from everything you've ever known. So being away from my relationship with my mom has been incredibly difficult. Not being able to go to my niece's birthday parties and soccer games and things like that has been incredibly difficult. But also surrendering, what a lot of, most 27-year-old women are doing, going on dates and, being bridesmaids in their friend's wedding and things like that. You do close a door to a lot of things.
And saving to purchase a home, doing these investments. There's so many things that you're like, this is what some people in my world are doing, and it's just not a part of my life right now.
And society will tell you that you are therefore behind because you're not doing that.
Sure.
Not necessarily that you just took a different route. It's like, no, you're missing it.
Yeah.
And that's simply not true. I wish we could, maybe evolve a little bit more with society of what can bring, so much life to someone at, our age. It doesn't have to be, the marriage, the house, and the kids and the dog.
100%.
It can be, and that's beautiful. And
Totally.
sharing your home with your kids and your dog this week has been just like such a gift.
I'm so glad.
And I
feeling little parts of your shadows of your. I'm so glad.
But also, being a 30-year-old woman who does not have a kid or a dog. I would love to have a dog, but can't have a dog, and doesn't have a partner to do this with. There's grief to it. Right. There's things that you you ask God, like, why them and not me? Right. Why not now? Why maybe in the future? But I think at the end of the day, as followers of the Lord, he always will ask us to come to him first. So prioritize him first. Yes. And that relationship and that intimacy, when you have that first, then you find contentment in everything else.
100%.
So
say it again.
When you have intimacy with the Lord set first in your priorities, then you will find contentment in everything that comes after.
Yeah.
So even though my desires...
That Paul said that while he was in jail.
Right.
He's in jail writing that verse. And it's like the context of that needs to like settle into some people, needs to settle into me. Like that first place reward is the ultimate reward and prize.
Yeah.
And I get that it's easy to forget, but all right, I'm sorry.
It's easy to forget when we, okay, maybe this might feel harsh, but when we rest into sin, it's easy to forget.
Ooh,
when we rest
that is a word. It is.
But like, think about like comparison.
Comparison.
We aren't called into comparison, but how easy it is for us to like rest into that. You know, when we're resting into...
we just go back to Eden.
Yeah, the desires
right away,
of the world.
And we instantly are like, things are being withheld. Let's go. Let's grab what we want. Reach for it. Do what you like. Strive.
What feels good.
What feels good.
Yeah.
You do you, girl. Oh, if I did me, oh my gosh, the world should be afraid.
I know.
It's like, it's so true. We just justify right away.
Yeah. So yeah, it's the conviction of intimacy with the Lord really has kept me centered on what my priorities are right now. And I did. So, you know, as we've mentioned, I am coming out of a relationship now, and I have felt like the Lord has given me a freedom and a heart to kind of pursue romantic relationship over the last few years. And so I have, you know, tried to put myself out there. You know, I don't want to just like sit at home and wait for someone to knock on my door and say,
in
love
Ukraine,
me.
in a war-torn country. Like, Allina, can I take you on a date?
Yeah. So I have like, I have made sacrifices and investments into dating into trying to meet people, and, you know, thus far been unsuccessful. But I know that I'm always going to wrestle with not feeling forgotten.
Yeah.
You know, like the Lord's called me into, he's called me into a relationship with him first, but through that relationship, I found myself serving children that I adore and need the advocacy and need the care. And there's always going to be a wrestle with the thought of, okay, but what about me? What about my heart? What about my care? Like, what about the desires of my heart, like you said? And so it's okay to wrestle with those things with the Lord.
100%.
It's okay to feel that pain.
Be honest about him.
Yeah. And feel sad and feel grief of like, hey, I want these things and I know I'd be good at it. And you know?
Yeah. And it's proof. It's proof that there's love there and there's hope there, and that there's like, but there's this famous parable, if you will, like an African proverb, or one of those ones where you just hear someone say, so I don't really know the genesis of where this thing came, but it's this this chicken and a pig walking down the road, and they see a sign that says, breakfast special, all profits go to charity. And the chicken looks at the pig and says, "Oh, let's go and do it." And then they get there, and it's eggs and bacon special. And the chicken's like, "Yes, let's go do this." And then the pig is like, "For you, it's an offering. For me, it's a sacrifice." And that has sat with me because, and it's like that, you know, I think it's 2 Samuel 24:24, where, you know, David is like, literally, he's given this person, he's building the tabernacle for the Lord, or the altar, and the house of the Lord, forgive me. And the person's like, "No, I'll give you the land. I'll give you all the expenses to build this thing." And David's like, "Far be it for me to ever give something to the Lord that didn't cost me something." And it's that thing, it's like, there is a difference between an offering and a sacrifice. Yeah. And I also think there's a difference between offering something to him that you don't yet have. Yeah. It's one thing to, you know, have your Isaac and you know, take them up to the top of the mountain and get them all ready. And it's also a whole nother dialect of hard to give him something that you literally don't have. And so your imagination is attached to it, which is also dangerous, because you're like, I'm giving you this marriage I don't have. I'm giving you these children I don't have. I'm giving you this whole future that I don't have. I imagine it'd be a lot like this. And it is such a precious fragrance to the Lord when you can give him something you don't have. And it's like, and equally, precious in a different way of giving something you do have.
Yeah.
But just that release of like, I will offering versus sacrifice. Like, I'm going to sacrifice this thing, and it might take my life, and it might take the life of my dreams, but like, you are worth it. You gave me everything. Therefore, I want to give you everything and not give you 90% and hold back these other treasured things that it's like, oh, but these are really, really precious. Yeah. And they're also good. So you don't mind if I keep them over here, right? Like nice and safe. And it's like, I so commend the way that you've just really pressed into grief in the process of you pursuing your dreams and pursuing just like the heart of God in an unfamiliar place.
One thing I feel like I have gotten really good at over these last 3 years is grief.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's a life skill that
It's a life skill.
No one's going to be able to avoid
What's
grief.
been your key to getting good at it?
Stepping into it.
Yeah.
Really feeling it.
Honest, yeah.
Yeah, I've tried to avoid it. I've tried to compartmentalize it. I've tried to cope in unhealthy ways, but I think the only thing that's ever actually gotten me through it is right through it.
Yeah.
Like genuinely just facing it head on, being really vulnerable with myself, repenting.
Yes. I think repentance is such an underrated part of grief that we forget to talk about.
Well, because I think a lot of grief does actually come from our own lack of faith. Like we put ourselves in situations because I think about like Sarah.
Yeah.
Put herself in a situation because she didn't have the faith of the Lord,
Right.
like waiting for the promises of the Lord.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, wait, let me rush this because.
And I think just expecting it a certain way. And so your faith has this really small box of a way of how it'll all unfold. And so then that's why disappointment is such a antagonist to grief, because it's just like, oh my gosh, and I say this all the time, if you can sit with Jesus in disappointment, you can do anything.
Yeah.
It is lethal if it is unconfronted.
Yeah.
Like it will drown you out. It'll drown out the voice of the Lord. It'll drown out vision for your life and what God wants to do with your life. Like if you do not fully walk through disappointment with Jesus, it totally ruins people's faith. I have watched time and time and time again, people not get what they want, not get a prayer, tragedy, awful things, inhumane things happen to them that you're like, I get it. But they don't have that inner gut to walk into like a space with Jesus and be like, what do I do with this?
Yeah.
I'm a disaster.
Yeah. I think it not only takes like the tenacity and grit to like get through something like that, but it also is like, I mean, he says, by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. And so sometimes I feel like we get so caught up in talking about everything that's wrong that we forget to testify about everything that's gone right.
Yeah.
And he says, and he gives us that, like he gives us that power by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony.
I know.
He'll do it again.
I know.
And so when we're caught up in I don't have this, I didn't get that, I'm single, I'm childless, I'm dogless. If I get caught up in that narrative and I'm not testifying to the fact that I live in my dream country doing my dream ministry and we bought property and we're building a home and we're doing all these things. If I'm caught up in what I don't have, I'm forgetting what I do have, and I'm missing the prophecy and the promise of by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony, we'll do it again.
That's so good. It's so good.
And I have to say, I say this all coming from a place who have failed it over and over and over again.
That fights for it daily. Yeah. People hear that you're in process. Same as me. I mean, I'm always like, I am
day by
not
day,
arrived.
Hour by hour, minute by
minute. I'm up here like, blood of the Lamb, God. I am right there with you. It's so, that's why I have so many different places that my brain wants to go with this conversation, but that's why grief is the most beautiful dance, because it reveals what you really believe about God. It requires you to wrestle. Yeah. I've said this a lot. Like I have grieved incorrectly. And I say incorrectly, people are like, is there right or wrong way? There's obviously different methods and whatnot. But when I say incorrectly, I withheld my honest thoughts from the Lord because I was so afraid of them.
Mm-hmm.
I naturally have pretty dark thoughts. And so being so afraid that, there's this whole dialect of faith that's like, words are life and don't speak anything but life. And it's like, but these weeds within my soul need to be uprooted. So I'm going to share what I'm feeling and thinking and processing. And I'm going to let the Lord like do his work in the garden of my heart.
Mm-hmm.
But grieving, oh my gosh, what a journey. And then it has this beautiful way of forging out the nature of Jesus. And I think that is the life of faith, is always having one hand on grief and just always having a pulse on like, what are we grieving in this moment? What are we grieving with you? God, what are you grieving? Like,
well, I think on this side of heaven, grief is always, it's an always.
Yes.
Because we still live in a broken world.
Right.
And so if we aren't grieving for the things that break his heart, then I think we're missing it. Then are we really holding, having the heart of the Father?
Yeah.
If we're not also grieving the brokenness of our world.
Yeah.
And that's also the brokenness in our own lives, in our own families, in our own relationships, in our own circumstance, but it's also the brokenness of the world in the Big C church. It's his children, the widows, the orphans, the wars, it's a big responsibility.
It is.
But again, it's not by our own strength.
No. And it's typically a bridge and a gateway to a life of intercession. And when you can learn how to pray through and pray for and pray with people in similar moments, or that's like when your heart breaks or something and people are like, oh, I'm just listening to this and I'm driving to my 9-to-5 job, but I hear about orphan care in Ukraine, but what can I do? Your heart's breaking for it? Pray. Intercede. People think it's just this little diluted expression of what they're like, a little drop in the bucket of a huge thing. And I can understand
totally
in the macro scale of looking at something, but it's not. Intercede like your life depends on it.
Also, if you are interceding, if you're communing with the Spirit, then he's gonna activate you.
Right.
Like there
will be some expression.
Like prayer is like an activation. Yes. It's not just like there's always that like kind of commentary around like, oh, thoughts and prayers aren't enough. And it's right, like in its solidarity.
Yeah.
But what you don't realize is if you're really communing with the Spirit when you're interceding,
he's gonna expose things.
Yeah.
There's gonna be light
come from
shed.
it.
Yeah.
So take that, understand that weight, understand that impact.
I love that. Well, so what would you say to the person who, like, how do you avoid, I don't even know if we really close that loop as far as desires versus dreams. Is there anything else you want to say there before we skip to the next thing?
I mean,
I think on time? 46 minutes. Yeah, we're good.
I think we're always going to have, the beautiful thing is we're always going to have desires that we're still reaching for, that we're still dreaming for, that we're still hoping for. I mean, once you meet one desire, there's always going to be something that comes after. That's a beautiful thing about life, right? Like there's always something that comes after. But I think this, knowing that I have things in my life that I still want and I still desire and I'm still hoping for, dreaming for, praying for, working for, is a part of life, and that's never going to change. So finding contentment on the things that I like, my reality and my present now, I think is the only healthy way to move forward.
Yeah.
If I'm resting too heavily on what I don't yet have, then I am going to miss what God is doing in my life right now and with what I do have. And so not ignoring the desires of my heart that still are yet to be, but not forgetting to praise him for the ones he's already answered.
Yes.
So Ukraine was a prayer for me for so long. And I'm living it. And it's so easy to forget that that's an answered prayer.
Yeah.
When I still don't have A, B, C, D, whatever, the whole alphabet and forwards and backwards. There's things I still want in my life.
Oh, yeah.
But it's that resting in gratitude, resting in contentment, not in like a stagnant way or, complacency, but just knowing you're living in answered prayers.
Yes.
We all are.
Yes.
If
100%.
you're just going to take a moment to recognize it, you'll see it.
Like the Psalm, I think it's Psalm 100, something in 100. Thank you is a password into my presence in the Message version. I think about it all the time. And Voskamp always says doxology or darkness.
Yeah.
It's one or the other.
Yeah.
And it's like this concept of like will, and Martin Luther quote, I'm like quoting all these people now.
Yeah.
Martin Luther is like, Satan hates the use of pens. And so if you can grab your pen and write down the little things and then slowly, and there's even like world studies about the shift in your brain when you start to go into space of gratitude. It's pretty radical. And is there anything more radical than being a person of thankfulness in the midst of not getting what you want, or in the midst of a stagnant dream, or in the midst of just believing for something? Like, there really isn't.
Yeah.
People look at, that's why, like, I mean, it is so set apart. You so reflect Jesus when you're leaning into thankfulness. Like, and it's not this name it and claim it and just be thankful until you're there. Like, it's coming to him with a raw, honest thought and being like, oh, but God, there's breath in my lungs. There's clothes on my body. I'm not starving to death. Like, thank you, Lord. Like, it is so humbling.
I think one of the things that I really, in maturity, have found is that I don't have to fake it with God.
I know. Isn't it funny how it takes us 30 years to figure that out? And it'll take another 30 for me to really figure it. I think I figured it out right now, but I know I haven't.
Yeah, like it's like I don't actually have to show up a certain way to commune with him. I don't
Isn't that wild?
My prayers don't have to be worded a certain way. I don't have to come in
polished.
Yeah, it feels silly to say it out loud, but that really was such a real revelation for me.
I've discovered that even in my counseling, sometimes I'll be driving to my counseling appointments and I'll be like, honestly, I'm feeling kind of good. Like, I don't know what we'll talk about. And then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, there's always something to talk about. There it is. And that happens with prayer. Sometimes I'll be like, oh, Lord, I don't know. I'm like, I feel like we're in a good spot, and all of a sudden, 20 minutes into prayer, you're like, oh, dang, Lord, thank you, God. Yes. And praying for this, or Lord, like, heal this part of me. I'm seeing this. You're shedding light into a part of my heart that you want to touch and heal and restore. And it's like, and that I need to repent from. It's just, yeah. Okay. So to finish this up, let's try and keep this 5 or 7 minutes less. The last thing I want to ask you is, how do you not go into compassion fatigue in a space of, because you have a really beautiful rhythm within your week, and you have, copyright and different jobs that you do here that allows for you to even do the work you're doing there. You're not 100% fundraising, which is its own beautiful thing that I love how you've gone about that. But you have beautiful, I guess you could say, boundaries where you, in a rhythm, you go to the spaces that you serve multiple times a week. But how do you guard not hitting a space where all of a sudden you're like, what am I even doing?
Yeah. If I'm going to admit for the ways that I've failed, that's one of the huge ways I've failed over these last 3 years. I have teetered on the edge of burnout a few times.
Yeah.
And I think, as my personality type, if anyone follows the Enneagram, I'm an Enneagram 2, which I think is actually really, really common in the ministry field.
Ministry, for sure. And they say it's the number one of women.
Oh,
it's the most common Enneagram of women.
Yeah. So when you operate out of a high level of compassion and empathy, out of some way of false humility, we kind of tried to die to ourselves in more of like a, self-sacrifice, like lack of self-preservation, like way.
Well, and you feel relevant when you're helping people.
Right.
And in a way that feeds ego to an extent, right?
So when you're caring so much for others, losing yourself in the journey is never going to be sustainable.
Yeah.
So losing your health and your well-being, whether it be physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, or all of the above, is never going to be sustainable. So you're actually never going to end up helping anyone.
Right.
If you aren't taking care of yourself. And so when you're working in these fields, you're having everyone and their mother ask something of you. And I talk very vulnerably here, I've had to learn how to lay down my pride and lay down my performance of being the missionary, of being the helper, the girl, the one that does these things.
You can call any hour, anytime.
Yeah. I had to lay down that identity of being that person for people, so that I didn't lose myself and in some ways think that it felt like maybe I might just die there.
Yeah.
Like, actually.
Yeah.
It just sometimes felt so heavy, and like I was carrying so much as Allina, that I was losing it. I was losing the grace for it. I was losing the energy for it. And that is just me operating out of my flesh, out of my humanness.
You think that's why people can't run the race?
Yeah.
With endurance. That's why they're limping with fatigue.
Yeah. Because you're operating out of a place, when you're operating out of a place of, like I said at the beginning, brokenness and wounds, you're not going to be sustainable.
Right.
And so one of the wounds or, brokenness I've had has always been my pride.
Yeah.
It's always been something I've had to die to over and over and over again. And
Said every person ever.
Right. I get that, but also it feels vulnerable to say out loud.
But you're like, but your girl is
like
extra.
I have always loved being that person for everyone. It's been something that has made me feel valued.
Been reliable. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Feel worthy, feel valued, feel appreciated.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you find your worth in something that you do and how you show up, it's very easy to confuse that with as a gift. I have this gift of empathy. I have this gift to show up for people. And it is when it's operated in with the Spirit.
Yeah.
Like it is a gift.
Yeah.
Empathy is 1,000% a gift.
Yes,
when
of course.
when you're in tune with the Spirit, when you're operating out of a place of health, when you're operating out of a place of performance, then it can very quickly become your downfall and your destruction.
And how do you differentiate the two?
For me, it's having other people call it out on me a lot of times.
Yeah.
When I find myself not wanting to get on the phone with people that are going to be the ones that call me out, is when I start to realize how badly I need to do that. Yeah. How badly I need someone to hold up a mirror and say, hey, Allina, you're missing it here. Yeah. Let's take a step back. Let's realign. Let's repent. Let's...
Yeah, because I think this posture of dependence is something Jesus is always inviting us into, whether it's the financial, but physical dependent. There's this thing where he's just like, I love when you literally lean into me and trust me for everything. But then there's this little tiny gear when you just like all of a sudden go into me mode and it's like, and it shifts everything in your spirit off. And you're like, ooh, this is harder than it's supposed to be. Yeah. Ooh, I don't really want to pray. Ooh, I'm really like, ooh, I lost my temper. Like, and there's just all these little tiny red flags where you're like, oh shoot, Lord, take me back to the place of first love of just literally ministering to you. What does it look like to minister to you in this moment? How do I commune with you? And it's like, if you are not so self-aware and having and consistently coming to that place of the secret place, then you won't be able to take a temperature on it. You're gonna be I left the gospel back there. Right. It's like,
yeah, and it's not just self-awareness, because you and I were talking about this. I can have a high level of self-awareness and then I lie to myself about it. Oh, right. So it's self-awareness met with honesty.
Yes.
Because
with intimacy.
Yeah. Yeah. And all of those things, like they're a triangle or multiple shapes. They're all connected with each other.
Very
like
much
you can't have one and miss the other, because then you're going to miss the whole thing.
Exactly.
So when you ask about compassion fatigue, I have my heart broken daily in Ukraine, whether it's about the war, whether it's about the children. I mean, the orphan care system alone is heavy grief. And then you add, being in the midst of a very destructive war. Like the spirit of grief is heavy when you're there. You grow fatigued, though, when you try to do it by your own strength. And I find myself trying to do it by my own strength out of a place of ego, pride. Yeah. For me personally, I'm sure everyone kind of has their own crutches there. Yeah. But yeah, for me, it's having to lay down it ever being about me. Yeah. Lay down ever getting the credit. Lay down ever being like, when it's even hard, because people will, when you tell people about what you do, they're going to be like, that's amazing.
Wow. Allina, you're a hero. Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a part of me that cringes. Yeah. Like, oh. But then there's also a part of me that's like, oh, give me more.
Yeah. Human. Man. Just, 100%.
And so you have to find, like, where is your solid ground? Yeah. Like, what is it that actually fuels your work? Because if it's the praise of human, if it's the praise of man that's fueling your work, that's not going to be sustainable. That's not going to carry you through the dark nights.
It is so dangerous to decipher the difference between encouragement and the praise. I mean, like, because it feels so good, but then also you're like, oh, dang, Lord, that felt too good.
I think it's really the heart of the receiver.
Yeah, of course.
Because it's like, if I'm in a place where I have a healthy level of humility, not false humility, a healthy level of true humility, but also recognition that God's doing incredible things over there that deserve praise.
I said yes, and I'm walking through doors.
Yeah.
I'm nothing special. And being able to say it with believing it. Then also being like, but I'm so special that he trusted to do it with me. And having the holding both. It's like, oh, Lord.
Yeah, it's
such a tension.
It's a hour by hour, minute by minute realignment with the Spirit.
Right.
And realignment with the truth. And, you know, resting in your identity and who God made you to be, while also giving him credit.
Yeah.
Giving him all the credit.
100%.
You know, praising his name, resting in the gratitude of his faithfulness.
Yeah.
That'll keep you, I mean, that'll keep your 2 feet on the ground alone. And it sounds so simple, but it really is a constant realignment. Yeah. Like when you're adjusting your posture, like, oh, I have to sit up straighter. I want to be.
You're right.
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to just keep recording. And if this needs to be split into 2, or this might just be one long one, I haven't decided. Okay. But the reason I'm just now doing a last minute Hail Mary is because I don't want to forget this. And I think it's a really important topic worth talking about. But I want to process your breakup in the sense of how do you, because last time you had a significant heartbreak, you hadn't moved there yet.
No.
And so how do you process serving in such a hard space while, and obviously you haven't been over there yet. And so this is going to be a process. You know, you broke up a couple weeks or months ago, and then you'll go back after full winter break. But how do you take care of your heart after being, you know, having something so beautiful and having to grieve it, and the Lord just and kind of having a reroute? How do you heal intentionally while walking in a healing journey with these other people that you're walking with?
Yeah. I think just to give some context to those who don't know, I was in a year-long relationship that ended just a few days after coming to the States. And
that she had planned to spend her entire break with.
Yeah.
Which was 2 full months.
Yeah. So I came to the States with the main intention to be investing in this relationship. And before, you know, it's obviously a long distance relationship. And so before I even got to see the other person that relationship ended, in retrospect, it wasn't surprising. In the moment, it felt very shocking, very jarring. Yeah. And fortunately, I still had this time in a place of, you know, comfortable and friends and family that I got to grieve, continue to grieve, and start to heal. I think going back, I have a couple more weeks here in the States before I go back to Ukraine. I think going back into Ukraine, I want to find myself, and I'm starting to get there, but more in a place of allowing the Lord to identify how I grew and how I developed during this season, during this relationship. Yeah. Because when I think about it, it was the first time I was in a long-term committed relationship that I thought was going to go somewhere for a very long time.
Yeah, totally.
I've dated, I've really liked people before, but this was the first time where it was like there was commitment there on both sides, and it really could have gone somewhere. I really thought it was going somewhere. And so I've been spending the last few weeks really just feeling sad about it, really just feeling disappointed.
Like we said, leaning into it. Which, by the way, I want to preface, I'm not being insensitive. She gave me approval to ask about this, or I would never have gone here. People are like, Evie is so savage. We had talked about this, and I feel like,
Well, and we've kind of been talking about it the whole time.
Yeah. Well, and it's a huge part of the season you're currently in. And that's like such a big part, obviously, this podcast of just like experiencing the nature of Jesus in the moment that you're currently in. And so, okay. So I'm sorry I interrupted.
No, totally. I think what I want to do, I can't say I've 100% done it yet, but I find myself in a place where I see like what God was doing through that whole relationship. And at the time I thought, you know, we're moving towards family. We're moving towards like partnership and life together and all these things. that ended up not to be the case.
Mm-hmm.
So what am I still as an individual? What was I still moving towards there? Like, what was I able to fully, walk into in relationship that I couldn't walk into as just a single woman?
Yeah.
And there's things that I know that won't fully be healed unless it's healed in a relationship for me. And so I think there was a lot of that got started. There was a lot of things that I was also reminded of that I love about relationship, that I love about partnership. That when you're living alone and you're doing life single for so long, you kind of forget. Yeah. You forget what's fun and exciting and worthwhile about being in partnership.
And the love you're capable of giving someone.
Absolutely.
And the famous God wastes nothing.
Right.
And you're experiencing that to be true in this even in the midst of your heart cracking. It's like, he didn't waste it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like, yes, I'm disappointed. Yes, I'm sad.
Of course.
Yes, I've faced and still in ways face the feelings of rejection.
Sure.
And wasted time and all the things that come after a heartbreak and breakup.
And you'll probably start back at square one of the grieving process in a week or whatever. Like, grief is
it's
so
not
linear. Yeah. The famous things, Brene. Yeah. Well, I have so commend the way that you've just been committed to sitting on people's couches and just being like, I'm just going to sit here and be here and heal here. And
oh, what an honor though. I really do feel like the kindness of the Lord was all over me during this season.
I know, I feel it too.
As frustrating as it all was to be in the States and have packed for a trip I didn't think that I was, that I thought was going to be and then it not end up being. And
but then when I get your text, hey, can I come visit? I'm like, oh my gosh, yes.
I'm like, I have all this unexpected availability.
I'm like, come now, right now. Oh my goodness. Well, where can people find you?
Yeah. My most active platform is on Instagram at Allina K, Allina Kay.
Yes.
That is my handle also on TikTok. Okay. So you can find me there as well. And on both of those platforms, it's linked to subscribe to my newsletter that I send out.
I love that.
About monthly.
Yeah.
Depending on the month.
That's pretty impressive.
And then if they want to find out about the work that I do, I partner with an organization called Shade for Children. You can visit shadeforchildren.org and find us there.
Yay. Well, thank you for your time and your heart.
Thanks for having me.
I love you.
I love you too. This has been so fun.
Oh my goodness, isn't Allina something special? I just love this friend. And as always, thank you for tuning in to this episode. If there's anything that Allina or I said in this episode, would you just let us know? Comment on something on Instagram. Let us know what stood out to you. Like always, if you rate this podcast on whatever streaming platform you're listening to, it does help it get into the ears of more listeners, and that does bless me greatly. And so without further ado, I want to say thank you again for being here, and we will see you next week on the Let Me Ask You This podcast.